The lights don't flicker in Dubai. That's the illusion. The skyline glows with perfect precision, highways hum without interruption, and the digital world flows silently through every tower, every mall, every home. It feels engineered to never fail. But then, quietly, without warning, something shifts. A temporary outage here, a network slowdown there, a water pressure drop that gets brushed off as maintenance. Each one small, each one explainable, until they begin to stack. Because the truth is, systems don't collapse all at once. They weaken in layers. Power grids under strain. Water systems stretched beyond comfort. Internet infrastructure pushed to the edge by demand it was never designed to carry indefinitely. And in a city that sells perfection, even a small failure feels unnatural. Almost impossible. That's what makes this story dangerous. Not a blackout, not a shutdown, but a pattern. A pattern that insiders don't call collapse, they call pressure. And pressure, when it builds silently, doesn't announce itself. It waits, it spreads, it connects. So the real question isn't whether Dubai has experienced outages. Every city has. The real question is far more unsettling. What happens when three critical systems, power, water, and internet, start showing stress at the same time in a city that cannot afford to look vulnerable? Dubai was built on a promise of control, total control, over climate, over infrastructure, over chaos itself. In a region defined by extreme heat and limited natural resources, the city engineered its own reality. Power plants scaled to support endless air conditioning, desalination systems turning seawater into daily life, fiber optic networks connecting one of the most digitally active populations in the world. The message was simple. This city doesn't depend on nature. It overrides it. And for years, that promise held. Tourists arrived expecting comfort. Businesses arrived expecting reliability. Investors arrived expecting stability. Everything worked, or at least, everything appeared to work. Because behind the smooth operation was a system that required constant expansion just to maintain balance. Demand wasn't stable. It was accelerating. Population growth, data consumption, cooling requirements rising every single year. The system wasn't built to relax. It was built to keep running faster. And that is where the hidden risk begins. Because a system that must constantly expand just to stay stable is not truly stable. It is sensitive. It is reactive. It depends on timing, coordination, and uninterrupted flow. And when even one part of that chain begins to slow down, the effect doesn't stay isolated. It starts to ripple. At first, the signs don't look serious. A power interruption during peak summer load gets explained as technical maintenance. A telecom slowdown during high traffic hours is blamed on demand spikes. Water supply fluctuations are labeled as routine adjustments, each one treated as temporary, each one solved quickly. That's how confidence stays intact. But the shift isn't in the event itself, it's in the frequency, the timing, the overlap. Systems that used to operate independently begin showing stress at similar moments. Not failure, but strain. Power demand surges during extreme heat, pushing generation capacity closer to its limits. At the same time, water desalination, dependent on energy, faces its own pressure. Meanwhile, internet usage explodes, driven by remote work, streaming, and digital infrastructure expansion. Individually, these systems can handle pressure. Together, they begin to test each other. Because in a city like Dubai, none of these systems operate in isolation. Power supports water, water supports population stability, internet supports everything else. When demand rises across all three simultaneously, the margin for error shrinks. And when that margin shrinks, even small disruptions start to feel bigger than they are. Not because they are catastrophic, but because they are connected. The numbers tell a quiet but undeniable story. Dubai's electricity demand continues to climb year after year, driven largely by cooling needs and extreme temperatures that can exceed 50 degrees Celsius. Air conditioning alone consumes a massive portion of the grid's output during peak months. Water demand follows a similar pattern. The city relies heavily on desalination, an energy-intensive process that transforms seawater into potable supply. This means water production is directly tied to energy availability. More heat means more cooling. More cooling means more power. More power means more water production. It's a loop. And then there's the digital layer. Internet usage in Dubai has surged dramatically with the rise of cloud services, financial technology, remote operations, and smart city infrastructure. Data centers require constant power and cooling. Telecom networks require uninterrupted energy supply. The scale is enormous. But here's the issue. Growth in demand is not linear. It spikes, it surges, it behaves unpredictably. And infrastructure, no matter how advanced, operates best under predictable load. When unpredictability becomes the norm, systems start operating closer to their limits more often. And when systems operate near their limits, resilience begins to thin out. The system itself is elegant, but fragile in ways most people don't see. Dubai's infrastructure is highly centralized and highly optimized. Power generation, water desalination, and telecommunications are designed to operate with precision efficiency. But efficiency comes with a trade-off. Less redundancy, less slack, less room for unexpected stress. Power plants must operate continuously at high output levels. Desalination facilities must maintain constant throughput. Data networks must handle continuous traffic without interruption. There is very little downtime, very little margin. This is what allows Dubai to function at such a high level. But it is also what makes it sensitive to disruption. Because when a system is optimized for performance, not flexibility, even minor disruptions require immediate correction. There is no buffer, no pause, no fallback that can absorb prolonged strain without visible impact. And this is where the hidden vulnerability lies, not in failure, but in dependency. Each system depends on the others to function smoothly. Remove stability from one, and the others begin to feel it almost immediately. It's not collapse, it's interconnected pressure. And interconnected pressure is harder to manage than isolated problems. The breakdown, when it happens, is rarely dramatic. It doesn't begin with darkness or silence. It begins with inefficiency. Systems working harder to achieve the same result. Power grids adjusting output more frequently. Water pressure fluctuating slightly during peak hours. Internet speeds dipping during high-demand windows. These are not headline events. They are operational signals. But they matter, because they indicate that the system is no longer operating comfortably within its limits. It's adapting, reacting, compensating. And when systems enter that mode, they become more sensitive to additional stress, a heat wave, a technical fault, a regional disruption. Suddenly, the system has less capacity to absorb it, and that is when minor issues can escalate quickly, not because the system is weak, but because it is already working near its threshold. Dubai's infrastructure is strong. That is not the question. The question is how much continuous pressure it can handle before small disruptions begin to cascade into larger ones. Because in tightly connected systems, escalation doesn't require massive failure. It requires timing. The human impact is subtle, but real. Residents begin to notice small inconsistencies, a slight delay in connectivity, a brief outage that wasn't expected, a change in water flow during peak usage. Individually, these moments are forgettable, but collectively, they begin to shape perception. Confidence is built on consistency, and when consistency starts to show variation, even small variation, it creates unease. Businesses rely on uninterrupted power and internet. Even brief disruptions can affect operations, especially in sectors like finance, logistics, and digital services. For workers, particularly those dependent on stable infrastructure, the impact is immediate. Remote work becomes less reliable. Digital transactions slow down. Everyday routines become slightly less predictable. And in a city where predictability is part of the identity, even minor unpredictability feels amplified. This isn't about panic. It's about awareness. A quiet recognition that the system, while still functioning, is under pressure. And once that awareness sets in, every small disruption feels like part of a larger pattern, even when it isn't. There are deeper layers that complicate the picture. Climate is one of them. Dubai operates in one of the most extreme environments on Earth. Rising temperatures increase demand for cooling, which directly increases power consumption. That, in turn, increases water production needs. It's a feedback loop driven by climate itself. Then there's population growth. More residents mean more demand across all systems simultaneously. More electricity, more water, more data usage. And then there's the digital shift. Dubai is positioning itself as a global technology and financial hub, which requires massive data infrastructure. Data centers, fintech platforms, smart city systems, all of them depend on stable power and cooling. These layers don't operate independently. They stack. Climate stress, population pressure, and digital expansion all push the same systems at the same time. And when multiple stressors align, the system doesn't fail, but it tightens. It becomes less forgiving, less flexible, less able to absorb shocks without visible impact. That's the hidden reality. Not collapse, but compression. This is not just Dubai's story. Cities around the world are facing similar pressures. Los Angeles struggles with power demand during heat waves. Cape Town faced water shortages that nearly reached critical levels. Parts of Europe have experienced energy stress during geopolitical disruptions. The difference is context. Dubai operates in an environment where natural resources are limited and infrastructure must compensate continuously. That makes efficiency essential, but it also increases dependency. Global trends are moving in the same direction. Higher temperatures, higher urban populations, higher digital demand. Infrastructure systems everywhere are being pushed harder than they were originally designed for. Dubai is not unique in facing this challenge, but it is unique in how much it depends on seamless performance. That's what makes every signal of strain more significant, because the expectation is perfection. And when expectations are high, even small deviations feel like warning signs. The realization is not dramatic. It's quiet. Dubai is not collapsing. The lights are still on. The water still flows. The internet still connects millions of people every second. But beneath that stability, there is pressure. Real pressure. The kind that doesn't show itself until systems begin to overlap in their stress. Power, water, and internet, three systems that must function together without interruption, are being pushed harder every year. And the question is no longer whether they can handle today's demand, it's whether they can handle tomorrow's. Because tomorrow will not be easier. It will be hotter, more connected, more demanding. The system will need to grow again, expand again, adapt again. And each time it does, the margin becomes thinner, the balance becomes tighter, and the consequences of misalignment become more visible, not catastrophic, but undeniable. So here's the question that stays with you. If a city is built on perfect systems, what happens when those systems stop being perfect, not failing, just straining? At what point does pressure become risk? And at what point does risk become something we can no longer ignore? Dubai still stands, still shines, still functions. But the signals are there, if you look closely. Tell me what you think. Are these just growing pains of a city evolving too fast? Or early warnings of something bigger beneath the surface? If you want more investigations like this, where we look beyond the surface and into the systems that keep everything running, stay with me. Because the next failure, if it comes, won't look like chaos. It will look like a delay.